Okay, what's up, guys? This is Crimson 60620, and I'm here. I know I've been like a little bit off lately, but I want to thank everybody who's been keeping up and watching my videos. And of course, this is multi-streaming going out to Twitch, YouTube, and fucking Facebook. Now I know it seems like I'm doing a lot today, and basically what I am doing today is I'm actually doing some art. Duh. And I'm gonna do some gaming and commentary. I just want to really work on this art. As you guys can see, I've been pretty busy. So the first thing we're gonna do today, since we're working on art, let me just move my camera back a little bit, is we're just gonna be working on the art. Yeah. All right. So, of course, I got to work on the shadowing. I've already pre-colored it. Um, just want to work on the shadowing. This piece I've actually done shadowing for the breakdown of how I'm gonna do the shadowing, and I'm gonna get to it. I have my trusty dusty markers, and we're gonna actually get into some gaming and some commentary, and I'm gonna actually be doing some commentary while we're doing the. I'm gonna be doing some commentary while I'm actually doing the coloring. So, let me just pull up the display and let's let's work on some videos. And this is actually going to be pretty fun because we're not going to do the general video and that I normally try to do, but we're going to have some fun. So, let's go to YouTube. Let's listen to some videos. And we're going to actually comment while we're watching this, okay? Um, Watch later. All right, so our first video, which realize how fucking, I didn't realize how popular he was right now, but it seems like you guys like a lot when I talk about um, Professor Wolff. So we're gonna actually do some Professor Wolff's video and why I actually just work on coloring. So let's go. Economic update. Let's hear it.
Welcome, friends, to another edition of Economic Update, a weekly program devoted to the economic dimensions of our lives and those of our children.
All right, hold on, guys, 1 second because I actually have to go get my pencil. Hold on. All right. So if you don't know, Professor Wolff does a weekly podcast where he talks about economic issues. And it's actually pretty cool because he's a Marxist economist and he talks about some of the things that it's entry level shit that anybody can actually pick up and just more of a commentary on just some of the stuff that we've seen socially throughout history, has a historical spin on things. So let's see Professor Wolf talk about this.
I'm your host, Richard Wolff. I want to begin today with some updates that struck me over recent weeks as extraordinary. The first one has to do with the Trump administration's admission that the deficit in the United States for 2019 topped $1 trillion. In other words, the Trump government spent $1 trillion more in this last year than they took in taxes.
All right, so just to give you guys a heads up, this is from a couple of weeks ago. I'm sorry for being as late to see it as I am, but yeah, this is this is one of those things where it's just Republicans talk about deficits and making sure that Democrats aren't taxing and spending, and they're the ones who always blow up the deficits. Always blow up the deficits. And it's actually quite ironic because Democrats have this aversion to say, like, well, we don't want to just tax and spend, and they end up being the ones who save the economy. And they fall into this whole category of that, well, the government doesn't work. And it's like, if you are the party that believes that the government is supposed to fucking help you, then you're supposed to be the party that says, hey, the government works. But yet, they let the Republicans control the narrative where it's just like, oh, the government doesn't work. And it's just ridiculous. But let's continue.
Why is this interesting? For a number of reasons. Number one, when running for office, Mr. Trump promised to do the opposite, to reduce the deficit in this country to either a surplus, literally get rid of it, or at least to sharply reduce it from what he accused the Obama administration of having done. The reality is that he has done exactly the opposite. Number two.
By the way, where's that wall? I'll wait.
The biggest single cause, there are two major ones, but the biggest single cause of this catastrophic deficit is the tax cut of December 2017, which drastically cut taxes on corporations and the rich, therefore bringing in less money than before. And the second biggest cause was the size and increase in the military budget in the United States. So you cut the taxes and you spent more money, not just on the military, but particularly on the military, one of the largest outlays any case in this country, and presto fixo, you've got a fat deficit.
And this is ironic because which you can actually, like, it's been proven. When you cut taxes, that means less revenue comes in. Corporations don't spend more money. And it's like what we talked about with Mark Blythe. Mark Blythe says it perfectly. If people, you and I, aren't spending money, corporations aren't spending money, that deficit needs to be made up by the fucking government. But, again, government spending bad. Let's continue.
Next item that makes it interesting. A deficit is a boosting of the economy, because basically what you're doing is that the government, in addition to all the spending we do as individuals and all the spending done by businesses for their activity, now the government is the third basic spender, and it is spending like a sailor. It is spending way more money than it takes in taxes. That is a boost to the economy. If you put that together with the last 2019 year stimulation from the Federal Reserve, pumping hundreds of billions of dollars of new money into the economy, you have a staggering stimulus. The fiscal deficit spending plus the monetary increase of the money supply. Why is that happening? Well, unless you've not been paying attention, you know. It's to get Mr. Trump reelected. It's a boost. It's like giving a shot of adrenaline. to somebody who's already running as fast as he or she can.
So let's just talk about this. Let's actually address this situation. The thing about it is, yes, he's absolutely right. The government is spending like fucking crazy because they're trying to boost this whole, like, he's trying to boost and I'm just trying to make sure I'm streaming for you guys, but he's actually trying to boost and it's active. I'm so cool. That economic growth, that economic spending, and it's just like, but it's not working. We have been. This is before we've actually saw the. This is before we saw the government going, the stock market crashing. And today, Monday, March the 9th, we literally saw the stock market, when it opened up, it dropped 1,800 points. But let's continue.
To get them over that last hurdle so they can get themselves reelected. That's all. Please notice that the Democrats are now screaming, look at the deficit. That's what the Republicans used to scream at the Democrats for. It's like musical chairs where we replace one another. The
Exactly what I was just saying. But let's continue.
Republicans are acting like Democrats, and the Democrats are acting like Republicans. And what's the lesson there? That the difference between the two of them in economics, it isn't there. They're just changing roles because they're just playing games to get in and out of office. The impact on the economy played by one is similar to the game played by the other. And since one is in office and the other one out, and then vice versa, of course they end up saying the same things to one another. It's why we need a real other political party, because the two we got literally are Tweedledum and Tweedledee. My next update has to do with a tragedy. Here's a statistic that says 14 out of the 15 countries who spend more than 18% of their tax revenue paying off debts, 14 out of 15 of these countries, the worst indebted countries in the world, on average, cut their social spending for their people by 13%. Here's the point. If you get yourself into debt as a foreign country, if you're so desperate that you have to borrow in your society, you will regret it.
And so that's actually a very, very poignant point. You see where you have countries where, and it's a little bit chilly, so I'm going to actually close my window. Give me a second, guys. It was hot in here before, and I just had to like close the window. So, yeah, that's actually, it cooled it down. So, you see where, like, think about countries like Greece. Or you think about, countries where, because you had to take out debt, you had to have cut in social services, and it screwed countries over. But let's continue.
That, or to be more accurate, the mass of people will regret it because the government will have to raise taxes to pay off the debt, and it'll do that by cutting services, by cutting money for schools and hospitals and roads and all the rest. Now let me take it the next step. Here's a statistic. The 30 countries with the lowest amount of debt raised their public spending by 14% over the same period. You couldn't have it clearer. Go into debt, you will hurt your people. Keep out of debt, you will be able to help your people. So then why do third world countries, Asia, Africa, Latin America, and beyond, why do they go into debt? And the answer is capitalist corruption. Let me explain. The banks in New York or London or Paris have every interest in lending at high rates of interest to governments in the third world. All you have to do is convince, and that's a polite word for bribe, local officials to cut a deal. You can make it sweet for them by giving them a little extra under the table or in a Swiss bank account. So those local officials sign an agreement. They take out a loan. That allows them to do all kinds of fun things for a year or two in their country. So they look real good and get elected. Meanwhile, the country is saddled with debt. And that'll be paid over the long run by cutting back on social programs and using the money instead to pay off those bankers.
So that's actually a really good point. It's a real key point because what you see is basically, and I swear to God, this is praline, but what you see is Professor Wolff is just talking about how a lot of this is really just a capitalist banker's trick of saying, well, you want your people to feel like you care about them. So why don't you take this loan out and really show them that you really fucking care? And of course, it's always with some string or stipulation attached where it's more or less a way of controlling that politician by getting them hooked. And of course, they bribe them. Of course, they bribe them. Of course, they bribe them. And even if it's not illegal, they try to give them money to take the loan. It's like those things where you see when you get payday loans where they say, "Oh yeah, no money down for this one," or "You always approved," and then there's stipulations behind it. So basically, bankers are becoming payday loaners to fucking countries. But let's continue.
As long as you allow private banking and corrupt officials to get together and put a debt on the mass of people, you will see the tragedies we have all around us. My next update has to do with the city of Amsterdam in Holland. It did something interesting recently that I thought many of you, particularly those of you in between the ages of 18 and 34, might find delicious. Here's what Amsterdam did. The city has decided to buy the debts of young people. That's right. Young people 18 to 34 who've acquired debts to go to school, to live, whatever. The city will buy the debts from the lenders. So now the young people will owe the city the money because they own the debt. And the city will forgive some or all of it. Why? Because that population, they say, has incurred debts that are dangerous to the community. They're going to bail them out by giving them cuts in their debts no matter where they acquired them.
All right, so this is actually really fucking cool. And like when I first heard this, I was like, nah, it can't be. They can't be doing that they can't be doing that for people. But they came to the realization that if we have young people if we have young folks who can't actually pay their bills, they have debts, and they are saddled with this burden of not being able to pay their debts, not being able to, just live life, then that's going to fuck up our economy. People laugh about how, Sanders actually says, well, we want to end student loan debts or end medical debts. And this is that to the extreme. This is definitely that to the extreme. And they're saying they're
laugh about how,
oh shit. Sorry. This is that to the extreme. This is them actually saying, like, we want to take care of our people. So Let's continue.
Wow. Now, many of you hearing this might wonder, gee, you're just helping these people. They contracted for the debts. So let me remind you of what governed the good leaders of Amsterdam. They said something like this. Over the last 10 years, governments have bailed out the banks who went bankrupt, the big corporations, here in the United States, for example, Caterpillar, General Motors, the AIG Insurance Company.
Exactly.
We bail out all kinds of people. Why the hell shouldn't we also bail out the indebted young people who need to get a new, fresh start in life? And they need to be free of these debts. So they're doing that too in Amsterdam. Just imagine what it might be if they did that elsewhere too. It might catch on. In the hopes that it might, I decided to talk to you about it.
You
Here's
boss,
another update.
man.
People have asked me, why is Mr. Trump and other folks like him, Boris Johnson, leaders in Poland, Hungary, and elsewhere, why do we call these strongman governments? What's going on with their being aggressive in using the government to punish friends or enemies, depending on your point of view? Mr. Tariff Man, that's what Trump calls himself, whacking everybody he can with a tariff. Mr. Johnson, cutting the Europeans off, and all the rest. And the answer, you should understand, has mostly to do with their own personal political agendas.
Exactly.
When you hit people with a tariff, you create terror among businesses. Those who haven't been hit by a tariff will now give you big donations so you don't go after them. If you have been hit with a tariff, you are now spending big bucks to get the politician to give you an exemption. There are thousands of applications for exemptions from tariffs pending right now in Washington.
So, and here's the thing with that. It's just a way to fucking basically get bribes. And I know it sounds like I'm just being an asshole when I say that. It's that corporations are trying to do anything to make sure that they don't get tariffed out. Look at Huawei, the Huawei Corporation. They got put on the list and they were used as a fucking example by Donald Trump to say don't fuck with us. Even though it was nothing specific with the way that they did business, they were just using an example to say, look what we can do to a company. And it ended up fucking them over. Because it was just a tool to Trump. And that's the fucking scariest part about it. These people have just ideas and ideas and plans of grandeur that you're making me look bad, so I'm gonna make you feel bad. And it's just why play with people's lives like that? And that's a shame because you can use your power to be so fucking helpful. But no, I feel bad about myself, and now I'm either gonna make a company hurt or you gonna suck up. But let's continue.
You get all kinds of people, the beneficiaries, but also those hurt by the actions of the strong man. The beneficiaries want to keep him there, and the opponents want him to change his policies. He collects enough money to win the next election. That's what much of this is all about.
Exactly.
Last item comes from the Bloomberg News Service, January 16, if some of you want to follow the details.
Okay, let's
What
go.
Bloomberg did, very smart, was to ask the question. The big Trump tax cut of December.
Now, press F in the chat to show respects for Mike Bloomberg's presidential run. He thought he can actually come in and make money, and like just spend money and win the presidential election. And I mean, like, yeah, he did get some sort of push out of it, but it wasn't enough. But let's continue.
December 2017 was promised to kickstart the economy, to boost the economy, and to lead, above all, to many jobs. And particularly in the banking sector, since the banks were major beneficiaries of that tax cut. And here's what Bloomberg, no radical Bloomberg, no critic of capitalism Bloomberg, here's what their conclusion was, as you can see from the Bloomberg News Service story of January 16th. Total employment in banks in the United States shrank between December 2017 and today.
It's like he was trying to keep it up. Um, he was trying to keep up the straight face with it, and it was just funny. But let's continue.
All the promises of more jobs, false. Reality, fewer jobs. What did the banks do with their increased profits? By the way, the big banks, the 6 huge banks that are dominant in the United States, got more profits in the last 2 years, 2018 and 2019, than they had ever seen before. The tax cut was an enormous benefit to their bottom line, increasing dividends, increasing their liquid cash, increasing the value of their stocks, you name it. But they didn't hire more people. They reduced their payroll. They took the profits, boosted their own stock by buying it back from the stock market, pushing up the price, and by giving dividends to their shareholders.
So let's just talk about stock buybacks, and it's actually quite poignant because, especially those of us who play video games, we've seen it where a company does a stock buyback, and in case of like Activision Blizzard, where they did a stock buyback and said, "Oh, we have so much money and we've excelled so much," but then turn around and lay off people. It's a way for presidents as a company to actually get more money because they are paid in stock buybacks and they don't give a fuck about the health of the company. But let's continue.
And big pay packages to their top executives. Don't be fooled. The arguments that politicians make as to why they have to do something that benefits the rich are never explained to us as being done to benefit the rich. Just like they're never being explained to us as an act to benefit the rich in exchange for donations from the rich to the same politicians. Instead, we are told wonderful, glowing stories about how, for example, the tax cut of 2017 is going to boost jobs, is going to boost the employment in the banking sector, is going to have all these wonderful social benefits.
And yet and still, with those tax cuts, and to be honest with you guys, I was part of because of the tax cuts, it actually led to part of my company actually being sold to another company. Now I'm not gonna say what that was in totality, but it was, well, we needed cash on hand, so let's actually sell this part of the company to another company. It's never used. Whenever you see big tax cuts, it's never used to benefit those employees. It's always used to benefit the shareholders. But let's continue.
Don't be fooled. The lobbyists teach the politicians, we want you to do this for the company that pays us. But we know that you're a politician who has to get reelected. So here is a memo with 6 lovely talking points. You can go on Face the Nation next Sunday and explain to the people why what you're doing for us is actually done for all of them. By the way, that's how the tax bill of 2017 was sold to the American people and their political leaders, where the word leaders is in quotes. We are at the end of the first half of our program.
All right, so we're just going about that, going over this. This is actually pretty fun. Where we just going over like just some of the rhetorical shit that Professor Wolff does and says. He's actually really fun to watch. and we're gonna going on to the next part. And since he's taking his break, I'm gonna actually take the break to say, please like and subscribe if you want to see more of my artwork. If you want to hear more of my commentary, like and subscribe and share this video. But let's have this go on.
Program. Please subscribe to our YouTube.
We're gonna let him play that out, and it looks as if he's gonna have a special guest. So in the next half hour of it, let's talk about with the unity of the left. All right. So let's go.
Welcome back, friends, to the second half of Economic Update for today. I'm especially pleased to have with me two guests in a wonderful position to talk about something I've been interested in talking about for quite a while, but we didn't quite have the conditions for it.
Great, come on.
Namely, a resurgence of the left in American social life, cultural life, political life. Not only new things developing and growing, but collaboration with different parts of the left getting together. That's has been as rare as a growth period, so it's really good to have this opportunity. And
Okay, that was a nice little shot. Like, collaboration with unity in the left is as rare as a growth period. That was a nice little shot, Professor. That was, but let's continue.
share it with all of you. So our first two guests to be introduced. First, Karen Ranucci. She is a media activist, journalist, and educator. She is a member of the coordinating committee of something called the Center for Critical Thought in New York City. That's what she's going to be talking to us about. And in particular, their project of creating what they call a school for socialism. And you can connect with them to pursue this by going to info@centerforcriticalthought.org.
And that's actually amazing because we actually need more critical thought in this fucking country where people just they're not beholden to just the training that we get in school to just learn how to shut up and ask questions and raise your hands to ask questions. No, we need more of a critical thought in this fucking country where people are just encouraged to think more, not just think more from themselves, but have a critical mindset with a lot of the ways that they think. And we don't have that, but let's continue.
And my second guest, who's been on the program before, is Rob Robinson. He was a co-founder and member of the leadership committee of Take Back the Land movement, and he's currently a staff member at the National Economic and Social Rights Initiative, known as NESRI. After losing his job in 2001, he spent 2 years homeless on the streets of Miami, Florida, and 10 months in a New York City shelter. He eventually overcame homelessness and has been a part of the housing movement in New York City since 2007. He has worked with the United Nations, the U.S. Human Rights Network, and with homeless movements and populations in at least the following countries:
Wow.
Hungary, Germany, South Africa, Spain, and Brazil. Welcome, Karen. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
Wow, that's actually really impressive that somebody does actually go through the pain of homelessness and actually is able to, not only pull themselves up by the bootstraps, but actually share and fight to make sure others don't go through the same thing or recover from the same thing. It's the whole mantra of not just fighting for myself, but fighting for those who actually need the help. But let's continue.
Okay, let's start by having each of you tell us a little bit about the particular project you're working on, and then we'll go into how they connect to each other and what they mean for America. How about we start with you, Kara?
Well, for a long time, people have been feeling that we have wonderful teachers, educators, activists who have so many experiences to share. As we want to make a better world. And how, so we felt that we needed to pull forces together and create a learning institution. And so we've made the Center for Critical Thought, and we're working with academics and activists around the country, around New York City. Right now, the goal is to make it happen
Right.
everywhere, because people need education. We have so many experiences of the past, and how do we build this world that we want to build? And many young people want to learn, so that's what we're doing.
Okay. Rob, can you give it?
So that is actually something where I can actually really agree on. You actually see it where a lot of people do want to have, it's people want to learn. And I go back and forth with the argument of some people just don't want to learn, some people are stupid. And that's like the bad kind of argument to actually have, because no, it's that I feel myself that a lot of people, it's not that they don't want to learn, but they're just so focused on making sure they're surviving. And it doesn't, so when you're only focused about survival, it's hard to kind of take the time to do self-improvement and actually work on yourself. It's just one of those things where it's hard. Now, are some people then, once you have the responsibility, once you have the tools to do something, do you have the responsibility to be better? Of course. But how many people do have that time to just spend time on developing themselves? Very few to none, I would say. But let's continue.
Give us a thumbnail equivalent for the Left Forum.
Certainly. So the Left Forum is a well-known conference that has been around for a number of years. We bring together as many as 5,000 people from around the world, folks who identify as leftists, right, and who want to see a different world. And we always felt education was a big part of this, right? We were known as just a conference, but what do we do the rest of the year? So it was interesting when we were approached by the Center for Critical Thought to join forces with them to sort of build something that we haven't seen in this country before. We normally see the left fractured, not as united as they should be, and we
Exactly.
thought this is a wonderful opportunity to bring the left together.
Okay, let me go back and really ask both of you to respond as you see fit. I noticed that the Left Forum for the year 2020 has adopted as its topic, its focal topic.
So one of the things that a lot of people have criticism of the left is that a lot of it is fractured, and it's they don't have the same fall in line mentality that you will see with the right wing. And that's kind of, I understand why people have that perception, because most of the right wing issues are fall in line, do as we say. We like that's the thing about the right wing. That's their strength. They're more authoritarian. And the left isn't. It's more egalitarian. And yes, we have people that are quote unquote on the left that practice authoritarian ways of thinking, but I would say that they're not really leftists. They're more, that's their path to get what their policies, but they are fucking totalitarians, like in authoritarian, I should say, in nature. But it's just one of those things where it's really hard for leftism isn't this whole do as I say. Now, they may shame the shit out of you. Leftists will shame the shit out of you. And is that necessarily a bad thing? If you're standing up for what you believe is right and somebody is shaming you, I would say that's kind of a problem with your ideology. But let's continue.
Topic, socialism. And you haven't done that in previous years. What's that about? Why is, in a sense, socialism on the agenda for the Left Forum, and socialism is the school for socialism? Tell us a little bit about how your work is related to that.
Well, I think for us at Left Forum, we knew a capitalist society doesn't work for many people in the society. We need something different. And I think Bernie Sanders alerted us to the fact that this world needs a change. And you can identify as a socialist and redistribute wealth in this country in a meaningful way. So people are thinking different. It's a time now. And this is something that is coming up from the ground. People are fascinated by this idea of social change. So we thought very simply, let's make this conference about socialism. Let's appeal to the masses. And this is a wonderful opportunity as we join forces and again set the example for the left to come together. Why not give them a real issue to come together around?
And so this is one of the things where people say, "Oh, socialism will never win," and you'd be crazy to call yourself a socialist. Where in reality, people want socialist policies, and yes, there are some people are scared of the word socialist because they've associated with the old Soviet Union and totalitarianism. And the thing about it, a lot of the Soviet Union, they weren't actually socialists. They weren't even communists. They were government fucking capitalists. The means of production was owned by the fucking state. And a lot of people, it's wired into their nature to think that, oh no, the Soviet Union was just bad because reasons. And no, they were bad because they screwed people over. Like, they literally actually hurt people. So yeah, like, socialism isn't a bad word, guys. But let's continue.
Karen?
Yeah, well, I think if you speak to young people and you say, are you a leftist? That it means so little to them, because what does it mean? Like, I'm not a right winger, so then I'm a leftist. And it's meaningless. But what has happened is more and more young people, like when I was younger, I could get a job as a waitress. It cost me $3 to fill my Volkswagen for the week, and jobs were around and school was affordable. And now people of this generation, they're left out. They're living at home, they're all the problems that, so they understand that capitalism is not working for them, and that we need a society where it's built on cooperation. And so if young people, when polled, the majority say they're not afraid of socialism. This sounds pretty good to them. So, we feel that not to be vague about what we're trying to accomplish. And so, our goal is to build a socialist world. And that means built on cooperation. And so, we want to cooperate with the Left Forum. The Left Forum has left in its name.
So yeah, there's just a point about it being more cooperative with young people that want to spend socialism. Again, yes, there is a generation of people that actually remember the old Red Scare and shit like that, and it's just like, I get it, guys. I totally understand that you were brought up in an era where socialism bad because the big bad boogeyman of the Soviet Union was what most people associate socialism with is, but that's not the case. That's definitely not the case with everything. And a lot of people need to actually just get over the word and understand what the principles are. But let's continue.
It's legacy, and it's also very broad. It incorporates anybody who's progressive, and but the work that we want to do is not just critique capitalism, because people know the problems, but what are we going to build, and what does that look like? Worker co-ops and ownership by workers of corporations, or being part of the production system and benefiting from that. And as new technologies are introduced, rather than people being thrown off to die, that our workloads become easier. We get more time off, and we still get a living wage.
So this is one of the things, and please, guys who were Yang Gang supporters, like, help me out with this. Yang especially was for the whole, well, automation is a thing, and we shouldn't be scared of the future, and that's why we want to have a UBI. But yet and still, when it came time to say, well, let's promote somebody who has something close to my ideology, he's thinking about endorsing Biden, who couldn't give one rat's ass about UBI, who couldn't give one care about making sure that automation is happening. Biden. Like, come on, Yang Gang. What's up with that, dogs? But let's continue.
That's the world that we can build. But it takes learning from the past and organizing now. And so education is a big part of it. And we look forward to working together, where the work that we do all year long builds towards a giant conference to discuss these issues. And then it doesn't end there.
That's
we
right.
keep going all the next year.
That's right.
I want to follow up on one thing. What made you and people you're working with on this Center for Critical Thought, what made you think this was the right time to build a new school for doing this? Is there something that gave you the idea this is
Well, I would say Sanders, but not only that, there has been a move more towards socialism. But let's continue.
the historical moment?
Yeah, definitely. Bernie has done that for thousands and thousands of people, millions of people in this country.
Huge.
And also, I see how the Democratic Socialist Party, all these young people are joining en masse. So they want a change. People voted for Trump because they wanted a change.
That's right.
He knows the language to make.
So, like, this is a point that I try to drive home with a lot of just my personal conversations that I see with people who are liberal, and they, we have to beat Trump. Not everybody who voted for Trump was this foaming at the mouth, seething racist. There are people that voted for Trump because Hillary was just a bad fucking candidate. She was a bad candidate, and she didn't care. And she came and told you everything is all right when you knew that was bullshit because everything wasn't all right. And that's the reason why you see the things with, like, Brexit. As Mark Blythe puts it, it is a repudiation of the fact that everything is not all right, and people are willing to throw a brick through the system. And Sanders is in a perfect condition. I know after Super Tuesday, people were a little bit disappointed, but I think Michigan is going to be a different story. And if I'm wrong tomorrow, then I'm wrong, and this will be dated. But people are in a position where they're just tired of the status quo. But let's continue.
Make them think they were getting a change. And so it is the time. People really want change. The New York Times came out to endorse Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar. Imagine that, having women, like, everybody wants a real change in this country. So this is the time.
And talk a little bit about this collaboration, because I really want to underscore, at least as one observer, seeing the different parts of the left in this country, or those interested in socialism, getting together institutionally to collaborate and to coordinate their activities. The left is much stronger in this country than most people understand,
That's right.
but it's so divided. If you could become what you're doing, a model, an example for the different parts to get together, boy, this country's politics would change and change quickly.
Well, I think that's the important.
So what I think Professor Wolff is actually getting to on this one is that you get a lot of people think that nobody likes leftist politics, and it could be further from the truth. A lot of the politics that people subscribe to, when you don't put a specific spin to it, and you say should colleges be state colleges should be free, and a lot of people would go for that. But the problem is when you put a narrative spin to it, yeah, a lot of people have fears and are disheartened by that. So you get the whole you want to give stuff for free, where it's like we pay for the shit through our taxes, or we can raise taxes for other people. But these are some of the things that you see. These are some of the responses that you actually see, that a lot of the country is by way just really really leftist, and really that's because of we've been screwed by the establishment so much. But let's continue.
Piece, Rick, as Karen continues to underline, education is at the root of that, right? But not just education to a certain sector. The young people are involved, older folks coming together, right? The elders and the young folks coming together and creating a new world. So there's a understanding of the history, the historical context, but what does a new world look like? The imagination of youthful enthusiasm coming into this and thinking about change in a different way. But education is always at the core of that. You know, as you mentioned in the introduction, I get to work around the world, and I've seen political education in other places outside of the U.S. It looks much different than it looks here. And I think this is getting closer. This idea is getting closer to what we see in places like Brazil, where the landless workers movement has their own school, where people are coming together and said, this is what we want to know more about. It's not just something that's held down by a certain subset of society, the academics holding down the theory, right? It's theory, lived experience, practical experience, all meeting in one place to understand what a different world looks and feels like.
So imagine that. Imagine you had. I've seen a lot of posts about people talking about trade school. Imagine that. Imagine you had a literal trade school, and not only did they have teach you to trade, but they also told you the importance of unionization. Imagine that shit. Imagine how powerful that would actually be. Imagine that. But let's continue.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting to me. I was recently reading a book about the German Social Democratic Party and how in the 20s and 30s and 40s of the last century, they had an enormous nationwide school system. They had schools in every village and town, and it was very clear they were not the school to get you a better job. They were the school to make a better world, and that made sense to people. They went to the one school to get the credential for the job, but they went to another school to learn how to think critically and how to move forward. And it was understood by people as part of what it meant to be a member of a democratic society. It would be extraordinary if your thing could become a model elsewhere in the country for others.
All right, yeah, and let's that like imagine going to school, and I've seen people say also financial education, but imagine going to school and you being taught the benefit of joining a union, the benefit of public service, not just like say like a program like Job Corps or the Peace Corps, but actually a program where you can actually learn how to be just a better citizen. And not just for your enrichment, but for the enrichment of the country.
Yeah, and you know, the cooperation that's happening between us I mean, that's the world we want to build, is one of we all benefit when we unite. And, under capitalism, it factionalizes people because there are those who are fighting for $15 wage and they're, for better health care, for free education. And everyone just takes all their time to fight in their niche. And if we had a socialist reorganization in this country, all of those issues, we would end the war, start investing that money into renewable energy and technologies that make our lives better. I mean, imagine. That's what I love is, John Lennon said it years ago, imagine.
So that's one of the funniest thing about it. We've had a history of people saying like, "Hey, we can be better." Like the Imagine song, like seriously, it's talking about how if we would actually be better to each other, and people like, I guess they shit on the whole idea that, and it's not even shitting on. They have a fear that nobody would be as kind as what they are if they give up shit. So they're just not gonna give up things because everybody has something out against them and be for themselves. And why am I gonna put down my fucking gun as a euphemism where somebody else has theirs? And it's just like people don't get that's the fostering of mistrust, and that's because capitalism. Like seriously, that shit is because capitalism. But let's continue.
And that's what we need to do is not only imagine, but then start working towards how do we build that. And it's only through unity. And that's what we're seeing. I think Bernie has made unity among people towards true social change.
It's really interesting if you could get the constituents of each of the movements to understand that an alliance would make them stronger because all the other movements are helping them in exchange for them helping all the other. I mean, you can see the logic. And there are even some people who think that the right wing in America has been a bit better at that in recent years,
That's right.
Exactly.
doing that than the left, and it's time to catch up and surpass.
You can go back to the Tea Party, right? They were organized and they pulled themselves
Exactly.
together in that way. We need to replicate those practices, right? As Karen said, people work in silos, right? And that's not going to get us anywhere. That keeps us fractured. We think we're making change. We get incremental little change, but that's not making the change that we want to see. So this is an opportunity to bring the masses together into one space and see cooperation, what it looks like, what it feels like, touch it, and put it to
Exactly.
practice. And I think that's going to make a better world for all of us.
And I think that's going to be the last word for that. And I know it's going to be the last word for him. But I wanted, like, that is actually fucking awesome. And that's fucking amazing that, you see groups actually working together. Other than just saying, well, let's keep everything the same. And no, we don't need change. And it's just like, come on now. I can't stress this enough. The establishment doesn't want you to rock the boat because it's their fucking boat. But let's continue. And we're gonna in this part of this video right here, let's see if we can go to another one. Show more response videos. Yay. Close this window. Let's do Coach Red Pill. Oh God, I'm gonna regret this one, aren't I? Let's do it. Let's